Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy 3D Wednesday, where we're going to be answering Cinema 4D questions from the chat, from Twitch and YouTube. Somebody's on YouTube already, and I see some people saying hello. On Twitch, we'll give that a minute for people to sound off and say hello. Hope everything is going well for everyone. Thank you, Pro Tools, always on it. And let's let this catch up a little bit as we go. This looks good. I've got, oops, did I just modify the scale? Ooh. There we go. That's neat. Okay, that's working. And let people show up. Yeah, we got more people popping up on both. So I'm assuming I properly put YouTube on this time. So, hi, everybody. Who do we got hanging out? Tobias, Real Pixel, Rogue Electron, V Ruckus, Zach, Zaza, Michael, Mr. Matt Dog, Type Ogre, Pro Tools, Dean, hello, welcome, Eric, Brainwades or Brainwade Scott, welcome, Oliver, Brawlius, Monthys, another Dean, two Deans, Ninja Cran, welcome Ninja Cran, Animation Hamster, Bobby, Baby, welcome. Got some new names today. Jezebella Bing Bong, nice. Blue Tone. And then over on YouTube, we got some people hanging out. Oh, Blue Tone's hanging out on both Twitch and YouTube. Michelangelo, Travis, George. Is it Raul or is it Raul? I'm not sure. Megan, Mikhail, Pablo, 3A, welcome. Stefan, that's a cool spelling of Stefan. Or Steffi, I'm not sure. Rosley. We got some, I'm terrible with pronunciation. So it's, it's Brian, not Brain. Oops, did I misread that? Brian. No, yeah. Sorry, it's Brian, not Brain. Go with Brain. I knew somebody who, when they were born, they misspelled Brian on the birth certificate. So for a little while, he was illegally named Brain. So welcome, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. What do we have going on? Well, last week I had mentioned maybe a Lego face tutorial. That ended up not working out. It turned out that it turns out that lofts in Cinema 4D are really slow. Like if you're updating a loft, it calculates really, really slowly. So the face rig didn't run fast enough to kind of do real-time feedback. So I abandoned that and ended up recording a little quick tip tutorial. But this week we've started tinkering. I just want to show this because it's really fun. We started tinkering with, some people were talking about motors, that they wanted motor stuff. And last week in the live stream, we ended up tinkering a little bit with a winch. So this is I'm hoping to make some sort of tutorial out of this, but I love making mechanisms of some sort. So this is a simple catapult. Obviously I don't have like all the structures here, but mechanically this is happening. And there's some espresso to help automatically smartly trigger things, but I just thought this was neat, so I wanted to show it. So we made the dynamics run fast enough that's in real time, and this winch spins and actually pulls this down with a lot of tension, which then bumps this little mechanism, which makes the ball roll into the chute, and then the winch unwinds itself, and once it unwinds enough, it unlocks it and shoots it, and it's purely via motors and the tension. So there's actually one motor trying to force this upward and forward, and this other one is winching it backward, and it flings it, and ultimately it's creating this perfect looping animation. And I'm particularly fond of this, although it might be hard to explain in the tutorial, but this is actually a proper working mechanism where the catapult itself pushes down this lever, which tilts the ball in, and then this will go boop and push this ball up, but it also traps it so that ball can't fall until the catapult launches, so they don't bunch up on each other. And this is all essentially just one mechanism happening, just this chain raveling and unraveling. So it's the only thing animated, and everything else automatically triggers. So there might be a tutorial based off of this. I'm not sure entirely very specifically where that's going to go, because it's probably going to take a long time to build. There's a lot of different concepts here, but yeah, this is actually a dynamic chain. There's no fakery on that. It's just the dynamic chain, and it's working pretty well. It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's the Rube Goldberg machine is like, those are always huge inspirations to me. But any one segment of it's going to take a long time to control, and that's where that one's at. So I don't know exactly where that will end up. And even the idea there was supposed to be to make 2 catapults and have them launch the balls on the other end, and then they fall into the net. So you have 2 catapults constantly filling each other up to launch. I'm not sure where that will end up, but the goal is to record that as a tutorial. And it could be pretty cool. And building little rigs like those metallic rings traveling, it's actually really easy to make those and automatically make them adjustable and whatnot. So it's super fun. A couple other people showing up. We got Sid and Christine. Gift. Welcome, everybody. Sage is here. Welcome, welcome. Trey. Eric. So, Pi. Welcome, Pi. Pi Baron. And I guess it's worth mentioning, and I was just showing that building and rigging and testing of that. I do bonus live streams. If you're supporting on Patreon, I have bonus live streams that are currently happening every Tuesday and Thursday. And one of the days is just exploring things deeper. Usually it's ideas that come from this live stream, where I'll explore those ideas even further and see if there's a cool tutorial to make from it. And then the like Thursdays is recording the tutorial. So it's like the raw practice run, and I interact with the chat, and it's like, oh, this would be cool to do, or maybe that would be. And sometimes we hit dead ends, but it's been working well so far. I recorded 9 tutorials in 9 weeks. There's a good chance I'm going to start doing every other week after 10, but we'll see. So start getting those questions together. We're going to get this going proper. And let's see, the rules, hopefully. Well, I mean, for anybody who's maybe new, post questions. If you're on YouTube, you can't put a link. It just doesn't allow it. But you can type out questions. I like typed out questions. If you want to do a link, you have to head over to Twitch. There should be a link to Twitch below YouTube if you want. But YouTube is good because you can rewind and pause and slow things down, where Twitch, it's always real time. You can only be where the live stream currently is at, so you can't pause or anything. So they both have their advantages and whatnot. It's a good idea to put a big question, capital question, all the way through, so it jumps out at me. It's not like an official thing. I just keep an eye on it. Make sure you do a shout out, or the link will show. I want the link to show who the artist or the studio is that made it. That's very, very important. I need to be able to see who created it. Otherwise, we won't tackle it if it's a reference. But I do like typed out questions like, oh, how would you model this? Like, I like those kind of questions. What else? There's something else I was going to mention. Not super important. Oh, I tend to randomly just jump back and forth and grab whichever link. So I'm not going in a particular order. I'm trying to make it as random as possible. Like if somebody's been asking questions every week, I'll try to make sure that people who are new or people who haven't really asked too many questions kind of get a generic priority. I don't want it to be very official. So I just kind of jump around. If I don't get to your question and we're kind of wrapping one up, feel free to post it again. Just don't spam it. And those are the rules. That should cover it. I see some links coming in already on Twitch. Thank you so much, everybody, for the questions. Obviously, without the questions, we couldn't be doing the live stream. So I'm going to start the proper intro now, and then we will begin clicking links that I have no idea what they'll be. So be right back, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, episode 26 of season 2. I'm going to have to start deciding how long this season is going to be because I'm not sure. They've always fluctuated in length. We're already longer than we were last year, but having a pause on it is always good for me to be able to focus on other projects. And it's pretty, it's important to be able to do that, and time fills out quickly. And I'm actually really excited that we're actually about to launch the first beta for our first plugin from Rocket Lasso. So that beta should be launching soon. It's a little workflow tool that we sort of snuck in ahead of some other things we're working on. So I'm excited about that, but still a ways away. The beta will run and we need to figure out everything, but I'm excited for that. We've already got links coming in from Twitch and from YouTube. Actually, most of the questions are coming in on Twitch this time. But let's, without further ado, let's jump to the screen. This is a potential future tutorial coming up, so we'll worry about that later. And, Dim, don't worry. I mean, I'll just take it. It's just a break for a few months and then I come back again. I've always come back again. So let me just scroll through here, see if any of the titles leap out at me as something cool. Project texture. Animated tracer spline. Intriguing. Peel multiple layers of paint. That sounds challenging. And it's just a picture. I'm going to jump. I like both those questions. That's why I got to just start not reading them, just clicking a link and see what we end up with. But I kind of like this idea of multiple layers of paint, but we need to see what we're looking at. Oh, goodness. Maybe not. Well, let me pull up the reference just to show you. So it's a photograph of a bunch of layers of paint peeling away. That is, I mean, first of all, it's multiple layers of paint. And on top of that, there's a lot of properties that are coming through here that I don't know that I have a very good answer to it, because there's a lot of natural curling that happens. We could do, let's see if we can do it. Well, let's look at a simple version. Now we're going to be using cloth. I'm going to put this vertical on Z+. Let's take a look at our poly count. Let's see if we can have a little bit of fun making these polys not quite so uniform. We can randomize them a little bit. I'm going to say 20 by 20. Yeah, let's say, well, even that's not that much. We might subdivide more, but 30 by 30, make this editable. Now, one thing that's neat if you've never done this is you can invert your polygons in this really interesting way by beveling. So I'm going to hit MS for the bevel tool. And by clicking limit, I'm going to do this slowly, but if I click and I drag, you'll see that all of these push outward and they will, the limit's not limiting very well. Actually, I think I ran into that the other day, that the limit doesn't want to limit itself. Maybe we have to go the opposite direction. No, I almost feel like that's a bug that's new. I could be doing it wrong. We also do it parametrically. We'll see if that actually does the limiting properly. So I'm going to let that bevel on the points. And now as I drag this up, you can see that it expands. And if we click limit, that should stop it from overshooting. Yeah, but see, I don't think it used to do that. Those edges never messed up that way. So what we have to do to make sure that this is working properly is do a very precise number. And I'm not entirely sure, to tell you the truth, what the number would be. Currently, this is 13.333 across. That's not a very clean number. Now, this doesn't seem to mind the number 8, but that does seem to overshoot. Is it half of it? So 13 divided by 2. Yeah, okay. Taking that number, the 13 repeating, and dividing it by 2 seems to be the number, and that is properly kind of catching it. I'm not sure why it's overshooting, but if we were to take that, throw into a connect so it automatically welds and make that editable, you can just see that I've inverted these polygons to face this other direction. It looks a lot cooler on something like a sphere, but just to do something weird and interesting, there's that. Now, let's say what we want to do is blast this thing with a wind and lock it down in a bunch of places so it can begin peeling. So selecting everything in point mode, hit UK to shrink my selection so that outside is deselected. Now I hit UI and only the outside is selected. So that is there. Now what we really want to do is lock down a bunch of parts of this and potentially make other parts of it weaker. But let's just make it a little bit random right now. I'm not sure what our end results will look like. But just I'm making some different little crack shapes here. But these are actually where it's going to be very stuck. We might need to grow that, but this is a nice simple beginning. So with those selected, we can apply the simulation cloth tag, go under dresser and fix those points so they are now fixed. I don't care about gravity. So under forces, I'm going to say no gravity. Gravity is not our variable here, because what we actually want to do on this is throw some forces at it. And that's under expert. Well, I guess I should automatically be getting applied. But if we hit play, nothing should really change. So what we want to do is blast this with some wind going forward. So let's see if we can do that. I wonder if fields are going to allow us to do something a little crazier. Not sure. So let's try creating a field force. And I want this to blast in a single direction. So we have X, Y, Z. Let's say it's on Z. If we want to make it similar to gravity, we can set this to 40 units. So this should be a constant wind force blowing straight to the right, the same strength that gravity would be pulling down. You see everything's, inflating in this pretty neat way. If we were to change our display mode, can we hide those dots? I don't know if we can. Dresser, draw, don't draw. There we go. So that's actually what that looks like right now. So the next step would be enabling this to tear. So the connect needs to go inside of a cloth surface. So it now has the ability to tear if we want it to. And under forces, under tag, we can turn on use tear. And now this tear percentage is relevant. Now, this wind is not that strong yet, so we can start increasing it. What I think I would like to do is randomize it a little bit. Well, do we just want to burst it? Because we can just continue to increase our strength. So I could jump this up to 80, so it's twice as strong. You see we do get some tears happening. And that's fine. But the trickier part is I think we might want to be driving some of this with a vertex map to make some parts of it stronger or weaker. I'm going to put that back to a regular gravity, and I don't care about the display, so those don't have to calculate. If we were to create a vertex map of some sort to enable these to have a fall off, I think that would probably be a good idea. I wonder if we could still leave these as the locked in ones. Let's use a vertex map in the field with fields in a way I've never actually specifically done. And that is we're going to keep the freeze value. Setting this to 100%, we now have, apparently the cloth is going to stop us from viewing the vertex map. But by creating this vertex map, it is remembering that setting. Now I'll create a second vertex map, use fields, and inside of that one, drag this one. Oh wait, are we going to run into that bug? There's a bug that came in S22, which I don't think has been fixed yet, but they did come out with a big patch recently, so let's see. But we did run into a bug recently where it's only allowing one field-driven vertex map per object, and we'll just have to see. So this is transferring the vertex map from the first tag to the second tag because I dragged it in. Currently it's viewing the nearest, but we could set that to average, and it doesn't seem to be refreshing. Dang it. Come on. This is a bad bug. It used to... Am I doing the right one? I don't want to be nearest. Yeah, I think average is the one that we want. So let me show you how the current workaround. It would be to delete the second from the first and the first from the second. Don't worry about cloth and even hide it. So that's actually doing the driving. And now on the second object, we can drag this tag in and it should be able to view that. And now you see that those will become separate objects. It can view it. That is a bug in Cinema. That wasn't happening in earlier versions. The point being is I'm importing that line, and by averaging it, I can blur them out. And now you can see we get the smoother transition from one shape to another. We can actually blur that out quite a bit to the point where it's actually getting really hard to see any of that detail. The power comes in, though, by creating a curve, and we can remap all this and change the strengths. And really, it's blurring out to almost no power, so I can start cranking this up and make it a lot more powerful and remap these to see the effect stronger or weaker in these various spots. Now, what I would really like to do is see the entire range. I don't think there's an automatic one. Yeah, that's not here. In Substance, if you're doing this with a material, if you have a black and white image, you can actually put something in, it will automatically clamp it to the max and the min, so you get that full range. And yeah, we could totally use somebody's suggesting using some sort of shader or noise. Yes, we could totally do that. Right now I'm doing it with a point selection. I'm just trying to do it differently than I usually do. So anyway, you now see that we have a vertex map, and the point of this is based off this one that we drew. So that means we could update it by drawing it or feeding in some sort of imagery. And the imagery would probably be a good idea. But now we can turn this on, let this blow, and it's not, I don't think it's currently tearing. Oh no, it is tearing if we let it go far enough. But this tearing has these different values. If we drag in the vertex map, yeah, you're going to see that everything's going to suddenly explode. We don't want it in there. But I don't remember which ones we want. I don't use cloth that often. But by putting this vertex map in, say, the stiffness, they're less stiff, which means they're more open to bend and start tearing. Now, there is an unfortunate aspect of cloth is that when it tears, it's a very limited tearing. In order to tear, let's see if we can see it as we go. Frame. Okay. You'll see that as soon as something tears, it essentially deletes that polygon out. That polygon ceases to be there. It doesn't break the links between two polygons and they both exist. And it creates this hole. And depending on the way things are going, you're actually losing a lot of mass. A lot of geometry is now missing from here. Having said that, we are getting some reasonably nice tearing shapes traveling everywhere. Right now, it's very free to kind of wobble around. And that's from where our various stuck points were. I'm trying to think of what the best way to do it would be. I mean, really cranking the stiffness up a lot or increasing the iterations, making this really stiff, but then making the tear length really low. could, let's see that peeled away nicely. If we make things weak enough and let them tear, here's where the problem is, especially doing this kind of thing in a live stream. This might be a viable thing to do in the context of you want to build a rig yourself and make it work. The problem comes in that we're going to need a lot of iterations of this, a lot of testing, a lot of tinkering in order to make sure that we get this running well enough. Well, I mean, the settings are specific. Like we can play with the friction and the bounce and the rubber and the flexion. There's a lot of different things we could go and start tinkering out with and then get one layer that looks really good and figure it out. But those settings are going to be so specific. If the wind changes, or if the distance between these points, or the resolution of the number of points changes. So it ends up being not that useful, and not that it's not easy to teach it, because it's going to limit the application of it, because everything is just so scene dependent on every single setting, every possible relationship between everything. Yeah, that's just going to make it difficult. And then even right now, I'm trying to think if there would be any cool ways of getting these, any way of getting these to naturally curl. Potentially with code, you could do something, but even that, it's not, the methodologies for that are not naturally coming to me. So these naturally curling, there's nothing that we can feed into a field force, which of course is one of the most powerful tools we have in Cinema now. But there's nothing that we could feed into this field force that would want these to start curling in on themselves that much. We might be able to make it fold in on itself a little bit. And let's just see what ends up happening. If I were to feed in the cloth surface as an object and tell it, I've never done this, so I don't know what the end result will be. But if we tell it to look at the surface of the object, and let's make this visible again. Let's see what we end up with. I'm going to let's try and make it as visual as possible. Let's crank this line density. Okay, you can see, okay, well, gotta go easy on it. I thought it wasn't showing up too much, but you can now see that these are creating these forces that are pulling and pushing. And in theory, if we are applying these, it could become self-attracting or repulsing. So it could not want to curl up by keeping everything trying to be a little bit more straight, but we can also make it attracted to itself, and it might clump up more. I'm not sure if it's currently attracted or pushing away, and there's a lot of variables there, but let's just see if we can see anything. Also, that calculation is very slow. And let's give ourselves a few more frames, and I'm not going to spend too much longer on this one. Oh, come on. Already it's doing a significant difference. Let's make sure that this is additive. It's adding to the previous one, so that should push everything there. And let's see if it seems to be, whoop, it's really tearing a lot. I think this is probably pushing away because it looks like nothing's clumping up. So going to the cloth surface, let's go to the direction and invert it. And now, it did calm everything down a lot. Oh, wow, that's really, I wonder if is it getting affected by itself? That would be interesting. And let's increase the power of this wind pushing forward. Oop, okay, we got to use a lighter touch apparently. Let's see if it sort of is, no, not too much. I don't know, even this look kind of, it looks like they're straightening themselves out a lot, but it's, I don't know. Hopefully you see the problems that I'm running into in order to make this behave the way I would want it to. We could, yeah, I'm trying to think of it. It wouldn't create a curl. Maybe you could make it flop over on itself, but as far as making it curl, there's just nothing that would naturally want to do that. I think you'd need additional forces that we just don't have, where you'd have some sort of like elastic shrinking, and that's just not really a thing in cinema. Unfortunately, I think that's as far as we can go. I thought it'd be worth exploring a little bit and just see if we have some fun with it. But honestly, that's about as far as I can take it and make it make it reasonable. I shall save that scene file. Jump around. Oh, Christine, that's a huge question. Procedural world building for environments such as trees and buildings. Well, first of all, literally, that's one of my favorite topics ever. Having said that, it is crazy. Well, I once wrote more than 5,000 lines of code trying to do like some more advanced city generation. I was actually getting some pretty cool results out of it. But like, that's the point, is I was writing code and making a lot of things happen. And it was pretty cute for what it was. And I do think about that kind of stuff. In fact, well, it's something I think about a lot because I really love that kind of stuff. I love procedurally generated things because then, you are a paintbrush saying like, oh, have these behaviors, and then it emerges. A recommended plugin for cinema, I actually don't know. I don't know of any. I mean, there's like the world generation, but as far as like cities and I don't know. There's if anybody has any recommendations for things that like do proper generation of things, like please put it in the comments and I'll give it a shout out. Because you get things like, oh, what's that world? Like I think there's one called World Engine, and yeah. yeah, I am the one who made CityKit. So, but CityKit is not city generation as far as I'm concerned. CityKit is CityKit was it quickly makes a bunch of buildings and it randomizes them a bunch, and you can control the various heights and whatnot. But I wouldn't consider that city generation. Let me see if I can pull up an image of this old thing I had worked on, and it just kind of petered out. And I mean, it was nowhere near completion. There'd be so much more work to do. I don't even know if I'll be able to find an image because it's on an old computer. But let me just search over here. I'm on a different screen. Search for. Let's see. I don't do too much searching. I do like Mac searching a lot more than searching on Windows. There is a bunch of things I like better in Windows. No, don't search that folder. Search the whole computer. This PC, please. Search for. I'm just unfortunately just having to search for the word city. But I was able to push. It pretty far. I was kind of impressed. It was not real time, but yeah, Sage. I would also agree with that. Houdini. There's some people who have. There's one woman who made a really cool procedurally generated, like almost like a swamp town. I feel like. And it was really neat. And it was all something that she built from scratch in Houdini. It was wonderful. Yeah, Dean, that's cool. I mean, CityKit was also built in a way to make it that you could go in and just yank out the buildings you don't like or put your own custom ones in. Oh, yeah, there's also, Mumphies is saying Dem Earth is a Cinema 4D plugin that does it. And Houdini... N Dunes is possibly one. Like, this is not doing a good search as far as finding what I wanted. You can say I have made a lot of cities over my time. Those are still going. I'll keep searching, but I wish I had a better one. Immediate need of a forest is what Christine is mentioning. I'm not sure. If you're not already in the Rocket Lasso Slack channel, you should head to rocketlassoslack.com. And this would be a really good question to post to the Slack channel where people will be like, oh, here's different ones I've tried and this works well. This does this, this does that. And that you might be happy with the answer there. But unfortunately, I can't answer it any more specifically. And then there's an ESRI city engine, which is unbeatable. That sounds cool. Yeah, it probably is for game assets, but who knows what. Oh, yeah, and there's Townscaper, which is really stylized and limited, but I've been following its development on Twitter for a long time. It's really cool. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's not one in. Dang it. Forester, yeah, obviously Forester is a good one. But yeah, jump over to the Slack channel here, and I'll put a link in the chat. RocketLassoSlack.com. Boom. Boom. Yeah, that's as far as I can go there. I'm going to jump back into... Oh, I put a space in there by accident. Oh, no, that's weird. I think YouTube auto-corrected it and put a space in there. It didn't. I copy and pasted and it didn't do that on Twitch. But anyway, let's get to another question. Uh-oh, I think I might know what this links to. MW stands for, is asking about mercury amalgamation. And if I'm right, this is going to link to Niles Red channel. Let's see. Yep, Nile Red. I knew it would. Oh, look, and we're getting a political advertisement. That's wonderful. This is what happens when you're not signed in. Skip. Yeah, I watched this video. It's an older one, but I actually watched this from beginning to end like a month ago. I gotta say, I don't really think that there is anywhere we could go with this one. I don't have this is like a million teeny weeny tiny little fibers being generated. So the way it's really working, I don't think we could do it. And then the fake way of doing this, I mean, and you'll see once it like breaks, it's gonna be very different. Jumping forward in time, you can see there's a lot of variation in these different parts. Yeah. You'll see when he breaks it, you see it's super fragile, even though that's aluminum. And the way this is working is you put a little droplet of mercury on aluminum and it starts forming this other pattern. You can see it's actually creating all this structure to it. And it's super, there's all this volume inside of it. And there's no way I can possibly think to do that. And of course, the fake way is almost not even worth mentioning because, of course, we could take this flat, create a cone shape, and just go and just let it travel up and put some sort of vertical stripy material on there would be a way of faking it. Of course, once he breaks it, that's the real trick, isn't it? You could create a whole clone of splines and possibly do something along those lines. The entire thing traveling outward and upward. I guess we can't really make it, but I'll show you a neat trick with splines that maybe will get your imagination going. I'll begin with a matrix object that I will set to radial. You can imagine making an entire series of these really small, or a series of concentric rings of them. But to begin, I'll create a count. Here's 50 cubes in a circle. And if I were to create a tracer, so I've got the matrix selected. And, did I finally find it? Open, how do I open file location? There it is. Yeah, here. This is not. I had shown these off a long time ago when they were in progress, but yeah, the city thing. This is going back a little bit for the city thing I was talking about, but I was trying to generate cities just from random geometry, and let's see. So there's different versions of it, but you can see how big it was able to make this. It was very large, and there's curved roads and everything. Like I said, this wasn't anywhere near complete, but I started even messing around with the materials. So it's generating the materials on there, and it was actually generating these trees. Essentially, this was one model generating, and like I said, 5,000 lines of code. But it would begin by subdividing everything and chopping up the lots and making rivers and bridges, and you could feed it a spline to be any shape. So this was putting in a river and doing this hex. So it's pretty neat. And the scale of it, like how big and distant they could be generated, was pretty neat. And just having fun with the various bits was super neat. But that project died a long time ago. But yeah, doing the kind of like the scale here, like a Tokyo scale thing where that all got generated. It did take like 2 minutes to generate it. So it's not like it's a real time thing, but it was a completely unique customized city with a downtown area. It's pretty neat. But man, I haven't even looked at that code in so long. Anyway, sorry, little interlude there. Jump back into this matrix and, oh yeah, what are they gonna do? Tracer. So here's the tracer, and here's a neat thing. I learned this trick from Mike the Monkey a long time ago, is this tracer is tracing all of these different elements, but they're not moving right now. So what we could do is move the tracer, and I'm actually gonna use a signal. I'm gonna use signal, but you see if I move the tracer up, it's actually pulling it up as it goes. So this is a good use for Signal. This is a plugin, but this is just a demo. So I use Signal all the time. I just tend not to use it in live streams because I don't want to force people into using plugins that they don't have. But this is a really good plugin. Me and my brother Danny spent a lot of time on this. what do I want to control? In the tracer, I want to control the Y position. Now I can just make this a linear spline traveling up. Let's say it travels up 100 units over 90 frames. If I hit play, you can see it's going to start moving upward, which is nice. And then what's really nice is I can increase my timeline to whatever, and you're going to see this will travel up 100 units and then stop. But I can say, actually, this is additive, so it's just going to keep on going forever, and it's going to keep on increasing. Then I want to control another thing with signal. In fact, I'm going to just make a copy of the signal tag, and I don't want it moving up. What I do want to control is the radius. So I'm going to increase the radius as it goes. Let's make sure that that resets to 0. So now, yeah, immediately you can see it's doing its thing where that's growing outward, and I want that to go slower. So I'm going to drop this down to like 22. And now you can see that this will slowly grow out as this moves up. And now these two different things are happening at the same time. And the tracer is kind of taking the state that it was at a particular time and then moving it up in the air. And you can see each of these is getting pulled upward. And the tracer is actually generating a single spline, which actually makes it run incredibly quickly. Meaning I could put this entire thing into a sweep. And in there, I hold down, I'm going to put a full-on sweep in there. Let's sweep that shape. There it is. Actually, that's behaving a little... Oh, I guess it was just too big. So T for scale. Scale is way down. Make the threads really tiny. And now you can see, if we were zoomed out enough, that this might start sort of doing the effect that we were just talking about. I think it jumped up in the air because of refreshes. I guess that makes sense. So yeah, you see that this is sort of doing that effect. But there's the level where it's like, well, that actually looks really, really simple. Now, while that's happening, we could technically be doing things like, I'm not sure what the tracer will do, but we could be increasing the count. Yeah, that's going to make the tracer behave very oddly. So all the lines would have to have existed already. And I just don't think that's the way that that is behaving. But essentially, this would travel and do its thing forever, constantly growing. And you could what's cool about using signal for this kind of thing is the variation we could add. So in this, it's constantly pulling upward, but we could add some variation to that. I can add a noise onto it, and it's already on Y. So there's a variation of 50. Now it's going a little extreme right now, or it's going too much up and down. If we calm that down a lot, actually, I don't mind going that far. We just need to go really slowly. So this will actually add variation to the speed where it might go a little bit faster and a little bit slower sometimes. It's gonna be hard to see. It's gonna be better if I put this randomness in the radius growing. So I'll add a noise to that. And now you can see that this ring radius is constantly increasing, but it's also got this random noise on top of it. And we can completely independently control that noise variable. So if that's moving too quickly, I could say, okay, the speed is 0.25. So now that will more slowly move outward. And now you can start seeing this little bit of variation in it as it moves out. And it's kind of neat. And of course, in addition to that, we're just using signal, but we could be driving this with various controls inside of MoGraph. And there could also be a random effector in here, which will add initial variation. Let's get rid of all the Y position. I want a Y. And how far should we push on the X and Z? So you can see, yeah, now you see it's a little bit random. And they're all still just pushing outward. And they'll all move at this constant rate. But I could add in a lot of, or we can change this to a noise-based one. And now there's a global animation speed. So these will all be traveling. If I turn on index, they're each independent of each other. It's really quick. So I'm going to drop the speed down to about 10%. So now you can start seeing we're getting this variation as they travel out. But when it comes to the actual chemical reaction, I don't know exactly what's going on. And we also need there to be more and more points essentially being generated from the center, but even in between. So while I feel like this is a reasonably good, actually, I'm surprised how much this sort of feels like what we were going for. But like I said, we can't just start increasing the count of the matrix object. So that's where I kind of lose the thread. That was an intentional pun there. But that's pretty neat where we get this growth and it just is growing. It's just doing its thing. So, it's cool. Yeah, I like that. And Signal's pretty cool. And everything I do with Signal there, obviously you could keyframe somehow. Signal is just a way of doing like procedural animation. I think in a pretty intuitive way. Let's see if I can scroll up. Wait, actually, I'll just find it in the video. So we'll even call it, well, there, aluminum mercury. I kind of wanted the amalgamation in there, but I am not going to try to spell amalgamation. Hey. Oh, didn't copy. Come on. Copy, 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 copy. Oh, wait, it's going up into these numbers. Yeah, be very careful with selecting in YouTube. It's very sensitive. I actually do that a lot when I'm like naming videos and whatnot. Scrolling, 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 scrolling. Yeah, somebody was asking about using sound to manipulate it. And yeah, you could totally use a sound effector to add in some extra variables. Yeah, Mr. Matt Dog. If ever there was one to be integrated, I would think that would be the one. Let's see. I can't pronounce a bunch of your names, so I'm just going to say Mutter. You've got a link here to an Instagram. How would you build and animate this text animation? Let me make sure that there's no audio. It's hard to tell. You can get stuff taken away if the audio is playing, but I don't think there's any audio. So let's pull it over. Okay, this is from Tobias Roschbacher, I hope, from Berlin. Let's just see what we've got here. Yeah, it feels pretty cool. This is a layering up of some. It's a really nice layering up of what I think is some pretty simple text animations. It's actually another good application of Signal as well. Let's see how far we can push this. Now, I don't. I mean, they're going around a cube. I don't want to make it too similar to the original object in general. So I will do this with a sphere, but the same concepts will apply, and I'll build it the same as I would as if it was the cube. So the thought here is we just need some text, and let's make the text real or full geometry right out of the gate. And let's just say Rocket Lasso Live space. And I guess that might need to repeat a few times. T for scale, scale it way down. Now we're going to be making a lot of this text. I'm going to hit NB. So you can see we have all this geometry in there. I don't need that much geometry. Thus, I can go to the object tab and go to the angle. I'm going to jump this up to 25. So there's a lot less polygons involved. And I don't know, I don't think it creates a single object. And I really, really wish it didn't output the selections. They're not here. I consider this a limitation of Cinema currently. However, I want this to travel around. So the simple thing to do would be to create a circle here. But let's not make it that easy on ourselves. Let's offset the circle over here and shrink it so it's kind of over on that side. So yeah, intentionally making it difficult on ourselves a little bit. And the text will deform to go where we want it to using a spline wrap. So we can put a spline wrap inside of the text. The text is traveling along X plus by default here, which means let's make sure the spline wrap is set to X plus, which it is. And that means we can feed in the circle, and you're going to see it's going to twist around. Now, this has a couple of modes. There's fit to spline, which is what it's currently doing. We could also say just keep the length. And now you see it's only going to be as long as the text was originally allowing for, which could be a good thing. Essentially, you have to decide which you want it to be. In this case, I'm going to double the text, have that be in there twice. And it's probably going to or is it just, is it by coincidence perfect? I feel like it might be overlapping itself somewhere. If I were to hit T and scale, as I scale, there it is. Okay, you see the end point? I can just scale this until it's like perfectly the right distance there. So it's there 2 times. Now you're going to see that the text is, for one, backwards. We could fix that by a couple different things. We could spin its vector. But you also, the other problem that we're seeing is it's not aligned with the geometry. So this is where I said, let's make it intentionally difficult on ourselves. But I think we fix that really easily by creating a rail spline. So if I create a second circle, T for scale, and scoot it over here, this becomes a secondary direction for it. And if I feed this in, the second circle in as the rail spline, you see it's now using that as the target direction. I'll even rename this rail. And the text is still backwards from this point of view. So I shall use the rail, instead of getting bigger over there, I'll scoot it over here and scale it down. And now you can see I've taken on the proper angle and rotated it to the angle that I want it to be. And that should pretty much just automatically work. Now there is this nice offset here. So we could just animate it right there, offsetting it. And actually, we probably get a couple cool layers going on here. I'm going to hide the spline wrap because I hate seeing this big purple thing blocking our view. So hide that while it's not selected. We won't see it. And then this is another good use for signal because we can offset above 100%. So because we already broke the seal and we're using signal day, I'm going to keep using it. Keep in mind, you could just keyframe it. So signal, what is it controlling? It's controlling the offset. It is controlling the offset over 90 frames in a linear way, going from 0 to 100%. And if we increase our time, then that will just keep traveling. It's a little fast. That's going really quick. So we can tell it to, I want it to be additive, so it keeps going forever. So now I could increase my time or decrease our final value because those really don't matter. So I'll say 25%. And now it's going to be traveling slowly, but forever along that axis. And I can completely control where that's going to be placed. Now, where this could be a little bit fun is let's create a null. And let's see how well this works. I'm going to throw that. We got this entire rig, and we traveled it off to the right, but it would have been better to go above. But I'm going to try making a cloner and throw this into the cloner. And let's go easy on it. That's a little chunky. Oh, that's really chugging on that. Then before, I'm going to turn on the cloner. Let's investigate. I don't feel like it should be going that slowly, but who knows? I'm going to make that editable. And yeah, you can see it's separating everything out into all these individual letters. That is really slow. Is there a setting? There used to be just a setting for this, but then they changed the bevels, the way the bevels worked. And now I don't think that I'm annoyed that there isn't a setting anymore to make this be automatically one object. Now I'm going to attempt to remedy it by putting that into a connect object, and that should force it to be a single object. Move the spline wrap to be a sibling of the mode text below it. And now you can see that has updated, and this is all, it's being treated as a single object. And now when I turn on the cloner, I'm hoping it's going to calculate quicker. It doesn't seem like it is because it's still regenerating itself there in a not great way. So this is a case where I'd probably copy my entire hierarchy, disable it, holding down control, and it's going to turn essentially everything off. So that's a backup. We can go back to that if we need to. Now, taking out the spline, I'm going to bake down our text so that becomes a single object. And you see we get all these selection tags. I hate that. No selection tags, please. And with those gone, this should run way quicker. And now you can see that this is running really fast. I'm super annoyed that behaves that way. I hope that it gets changed. I got to remember to bug Max on about that because I don't think it used to behave that way. Anyway, you can now see that this is cloning a bunch of these. I can hide the circles. The cloner, I'm going to change it to be linear and don't offset. And now I can make a bunch of copies of it. So let's make 9 copies of it and then create a random effector that is not going to affect the position, but it will affect the rotation. So let's say 360 degrees on every axis. So now you can see it's spun all over the place. And then I'm going to select and also add a step effector, which I think, yeah, they finally made this a linear spline, which I am pleased with. So this is going to slightly scale it up a little bit in a uniform, absolute way. So currently it's doubling the scale, but if we make this really small, like 0.1, even 0.1 might be too much, but it should be, what we want is it should to be just enough to be going past the previous one underneath it. And all those should, well, actually the cloner might not like, oh, okay, that is working. So you can see all of those are going to be traveling and over looping on top of each other. And turn on SSAO. In the random, we can set this to be a noise-based index. Drop the speed way down. 5, what's a good speed? Yeah, that looks pretty neat. So now you can see that we've layered all of these on top of each other and we get this really neat layering effect overall. I think that some of the text is overlapping itself. I must have messed up the spline wrap at some point. I'm not super worried about that. It'd be easy to fix. But yeah, with all that baked down, those are all layered and looping on top of each other. And then as far as that animation was concerned, a final step here would just be something like creating a second sphere and making it a refractive material so that we can see all these really cool refractions inside of it. We don't have time to render out during a live stream, but hopefully you can see where you can just start having fun layering these things up. And where I looped these just with a circle spline and offset them so we can get these really cool arcs happening on just individual parts, you could have made that. It could have been sweeping instead of on a circle spline. It could have been sweeping on a rounded square, and then it could have been around that shape. Or you could take any shape and draw a cross section. So I'll save this as it's kind of like this really cool news sphere, and that'll be its name. 3A news sphere. Also, I should mention that if you are supporting on Patreon, you can get access to these scene files. If you're like me and you like learning by reverse engineering, that's a really good method. You also get early access to the videos and what's not, and the bonus streams. I was about to do something else here. Oh, I was just going to show, these are traveling this spline. However, you could have a more complex shape, so we could just make something like this. I'm going to make it editable. Let's go to polygon mode, letter K for knife tool. It's currently visible only. I'm going to turn that off. I do want it to cut through. And then let's make it, is there not a, yeah, select cuts. That's what I wanted. So we could say, I don't know where the path is, but on this one, we can say that is a path. So doing that, hit escape and go to edge mode, and that should have selected that. And that is now that path. Shift C, edge to spline, because it doesn't have a shortcut. And now there should be a spline right there that's traveling that perfect path, and we could make it travel that path. You could do a series of cuts like that. You couldn't make them spin randomly, but that would do a good job of giving you a shape that could travel around. And you could do some rounding on that. You could even change the spline type. This is currently linear, but you can do something like a schema or cubic, and they're going to actually probably going to fight us a little bit because of how close some of the points get. B-spline will make it smooth. Actually, even that overshoot. No, that's not B-spline. B-spline, yeah, B-spline always does it. So we kind of get this lemon shape, but that'll make it curvy. You'd have to expand it a little bit to make sure it's not intersecting, or in this case, I'd probably shrink the original object a little bit. But yeah, just a little extra something there so you can cut individual slices of it and manipulate it. News break, yep. Mohammed, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Thanks for coming and hanging out. You'd rotate the other way. Jerome, that's a fair point. Making it go the other direction. I wasn't even worried about it, but yeah, it's reading the opposite direction. But that's a great thing about Signal. Like I could just type in negative, and now it's traveling the correct direction, and everything updates. So pretty cool. Let's see. Mick, how would you go about creating these raindrops and follow the path of least resistance? That's I don't like the sound of that one, I gotta say. And actually, and I'm only going to do it because I skipped it earlier, but Michael has the stick projected texture to an animated tracer spline. I don't even know what we're going to see here, so let's click this link. It looks like you even custom put this up as something for asking on the stream. Stick a texture to this. Okay, I see what you're doing here. That's that's sort of evil. So it looks like Michael made this, but wants the texture to be able to be revealed at a particular moment. So I am intrigued by the question. As a general, I'm going to, let's just say, allow it this time. Well, yeah, I'm not here. I'll say this. Well, how do I say this? Because this is fine. I'm completely happy with this. One thing I do want to be careful of is Rocket Lasso Live is kind of for general questions about cinema. And I'm not here to, I want to broaden people's knowledge of Cinema 4D is my goal. I don't want to be essentially helping somebody with I don't want to be being an unpaid person helping with somebody's client work. That is not what the goal of the show is. Now, this is a cool technical question that is neat to answer. And I'll throw this out there. I haven't really mentioned it publicly anywhere, but somebody had reached out to me and I did a Rocket Lasso Live Consulting, which is essentially doing a 2-hour live stream just like this, but just for one person. And it's pay. I charge money for that. I've done it one time a couple weeks ago just as an experiment, and it went well and it was fun. And I live streamed it to the people on Patreon. So because the client allowed, they're like, yes, it's cool if other people watch. I actually charge 2 different rates depending on what it was. So that could be a thing that I promote in the future. It just eats up a lot of time. So I don't have a lot of time to do that kind of thing in general, but just throwing that out there. But I still like this as a technical question. Having said that, I actually don't know if we can do this or not, because what it requires, there's only one way this is going to work. Because the trick of sticking a texture to something is you need to be able to manipulate its UV and project it at a particular time. Now, all of those shapes are that you've got these lines that are traveling upward. That means their geometry all needs to exist all of the time. So I don't know I have no idea how it was made. I don't want to know how it was made. What I do want to do is create a particle system and possibly show you how this isn't a way of not making this work, although it could lead to a good way. If these lay, I'm going to make this emitter really skinny, really long. R for rotate, spin it down. So now you can see we've got a single line of particles that we can say, shoot those out. In fact, I'm going to emit only for a single frame, and we'll emit a bunch. Let's see if that actually works. Yeah, that's sort of working. Let's make more. Okay, so we get a bunch of particles flying out. They're traveling upward. We can create a tracer, and now these will all just be straight lines traveling upward. Now, here's the problem. If this was real geometry, it is geometry that's going to be changing and updating every single frame. Meaning, if I take the tracer, put it into a sweep, and feed it also an N side, T for scale, we make this actual geometry. If I click on NB, we can see the subdivisions. And if we hit play, this geometry is changing every single frame. It's updating. We cannot have that. So instead, what we needed to do is the geometry needs to exist right from the start. Is that, oh man, is even going to be possible? Let's, is particles a good way? Don't go away, phone. Is it possible? I want to create we need the paths already to exist, and then use a spline wrap to offset them. And the spline wrap will be, yeah, it might need to be a per spline. You can't do clones because they'd all share the same UV, and that wouldn't work. Yeah, a bunch of people are not following the problem. I'll pull it back up again. The point is, this is already essentially a frontal projection or a flat projection or a camera projection. That's already happening. That's not the problem. The problem is that you want it to travel with these lines. I understand the question. So I'm trying to think of the simple version of this. Like how can we prototype a very, very simple version? Well, actually, here, I've got an idea. Let's see how well we can do this. In fact, that actually might work pretty well. Let's just see what happens. And hopefully people follow the limitation here, because there's a lot of people in the chat. Yeah, I think you're thinking of it that's more simple than it is. It's not simple. It's giving the illusion of being simple, but it is not. I'm going to make this 2,000 tall. That's probably too much. We'll make it 1,000 tall. So you see there's a little bit of a wiggle to it. I might get rid of the wiggle, and we'll do that with a spline wrap, or with a noise rather. I don't want it to be subdivided this much. Let's make sure the uniform is turned off. So, okay, there's a line. Now we need all of the geometry to exist all of the time. But it needs to travel a path. I guess the rig needs to be, yeah, one shot. So really this goes to, I'm going to create a cylinder. Let's go, I'm going to go really light on our geometry here. So we need a lot of height segments, maybe 50, but a rotational segment, I'll say 5, which is about as low as we can get away with. So that means all of that geometry is going to exist. We don't need a sweep. And the radius can be pretty small. So let's just make it twice. Well, it's 1,000 tall. I think we're going to see a little bit more of it. That seems all right. So I'll do 400. So the helix is a path for it to travel. Simulation, not simulation. I want a deformer. Spline wrap. Wrap the cylinder. The cylinder doesn't even need caps. We can get rid of that. Spline wrap on Y. So I want this on the Y plus axis, traveling along the helix. Let's keep the length, so it's exactly the length. Hide that wrap, and now you can see it's hanging out down here doing its thing. That's fine. Let's see. We need to manipulate the numbers more. I'm going to double the height, so this is twice as tall. And the cylinder is, 2,000 divided by 3. 666, nice. But we need it to go, it needs to be a third below the screen and a third above the screen. So with this happening, if we do a full offset, it's going to travel all the way around. We don't want it to do that. Actually, it does overshoot, which is kind of interesting. Actually, if it overshoots like that, we only need it to do half. In fact, I wonder if we can go negative. Oh yeah, it can go negative. That's cool. So what this means is we don't need it to be proportional like that. So I can, this doesn't have to be that random length. I can set it to any length I want. So we could even make it be the entire thing, which is probably a good idea. So yeah, let's do that. I'm going to make it the same height. So it can be 1,000 and the helix will be 1,000. Sorry for being really meticulous here, but I think it's a neat effect. So let's see if we can make it working. So now they're matching heights and we can animate this. I will keyframe it this time. I want this to be at offset minus 100% at 0. And then let's go up to 200 frames. And then at the very end, it'll be at positive offset 100. So essentially, if that's working, I'm not sure it is. Well, that looks like I broke something. Oh, strength 100%. Okay, so there's the spline begins here and it ends there. Now just let's imagine, well, let's look at this from the perfect front view. And if I frame my camera up in such a way that we just barely see the bottom of spline and we see the bottom and top. So what this means is this is going to travel upward perfectly through the scene and then perfectly travel outward, and it's now exited. So now we've got kind of the best of both of those, and we can set the spline any length. That's a robust rig. Let's check our poly count, because the lower it is, the better. I don't think it needs to be quite as high as it is. 50, I'll drop it down to 30. It might start getting a little chunky, but we're gonna be throwing a lot of these at the screen. Now, we need to control the UVs on one particular object at a particular time, and here's where it might get hairy, because we're going to need a bunch of these. Now, how do we make this a robust rig? I'm going to create a null. I guess we'll just put everything into that null. It's all at 0, 0, 0. I'm probably going to need a bunch of these. I can randomly rotate them, and that's going to kind of simulate the random little wiggle you have. And then will making them editable work? I don't know. I'll save this right now. Projected on hairs. All right. So this is going to need to be made editable for sure. Now, will the UVs exist in a particular spot at a particular time? That's really the question, and that's the question I don't know for sure. So this goes into a cloner. I do want a grid array. However, I want it on Z only, so we'll get X, Y, Z, get rid of X. Nope, I guess we do want X, no Z. So now we can, this is per step. I'm going to say endpoint, focus in at the center here, right around the center. Scale this to pretty much fill up the screen, or at least a big chunk of it. And now I can subdivide this as many times as I want. So now we get all these little lines all traveling. Honestly, that's probably more than enough for our test. And if we're inclined, we can throw in a random rotation up to 360. So now these are all wiggled all over the place. It's not, we're not filling in the spaces that much, but I think we'll still be able to see the effect. I could also increase our count. Let's go up to 100. He'll fill it up a little bit more. So just so you can see, this is a flat line with a bunch of different wiggly lines all doing their thing. It's a clone. They're all moving identically. We could potentially do offsets of them. And I'm not sure how much it's going to chug. It's not too bad. You'll see that these will all travel upward, doing their thing. In theory, there might be a way of getting some different offsets on there. I'm not worried about that yet. And this travels upward. Now, I suppose the time would be right at 100. It's a halfway point. This is the moment where we want a projected texture to be there. Can we make that happen? That is the current question. I'm going to say this is another version. And we need something to project on there. I don't need to overthink it. What's... Okay, we'll just project Rocket Lasso Live. Keep it super simple. I'm going to just screenshot that. Open up a new file. Paste it in. Well, I caught a little bit at the bottom there, but whatever. Save this image into episode 26. Scene files, new texture folder, TEX. And inside there, projection image. All right, save, back into Cinema. Okay, so taking this, now we're gonna have to make this editable. That's the sad part, because then we're gonna have to do a lot of work to keep them all alive. But that's why I've been saving multiple versions. I'm not sure if this will work with a projection. That's the tricky bit. However, if I were to apply a material, and we didn't even need to put this material on there for this test, but it will make it more visible. In the luminous channel, I feed the texture. And hit NA so we can see it here. This projection will be flat. Now I can grab the texture tool and scoot this up. Tell it not to tile. Thank you very much. Scale it up bigger. Scale it wider. T for scale. So now you can see that, okay, the logo is applied there, and we want it to look like that at this moment. And everything else, it doesn't matter what it looks like. So we've done that. Does this work? I don't know with the spline wraps because it's not in their deformed state. I'm a little worried if this will work or not. I'm going to right click and copy the tag to children. So you can see this material gets applied to everything. Then I'm going to search for the word CY for cylinder, and I can find all the cylinders, select all of those. Now I can right click and say, oh wait, I probably need the material actually. I'm going to select the material of those cylinders, right click and say generate UVW coordinates. So that should generate the UV coordinates. It says sub objects. That's neat. Yes. They jumped up to the top. They jumped up to their pre-deformed state. Yeah, that's a limitation. That's maybe not going to work. I undo a few times because this applied to children is intriguing. That means I might be able to do it up here. So I can say, oh wait, it's not, it isn't working here. Huh, that was weird. I mean, apparently we do have to do it the way I just did it. The problem is it's not applying to its deformed state, because these aren't really here. They're really in their original locations, as if the spline wrap was turned off. Let me think. Where they originally, because these are deforming objects. It'd be silly, but I wonder if we could apply this just with a stick texture tag. That'd be kind of wacky. I don't think it won't work from this projection level, but just for the experiment. Where does that tag live these days? I don't know. Render tags? No. Material tags. Pin texture is what it's called now. You can click record, and yeah, you see it's still moving along with all of them. But I didn't think that would work, because the best chance of it working is copying that tag to the shoulder again, searching for the cylinders again, selecting, actually, I guess selecting all these cylinders that now have those individual materials applied, and now saying material tag, pin texture. Oh, they jumped up again. They're still pinning in their not deformed state. And you see that's all squiggly and weird looking once it gets up there. You see like there's like curvature and whatnot. That's the problem we're getting. So it's sticking them in their currently deformed state. Okay. So what that means is they need to be at their 0 position. Let's see, how can I even show what this is doing? I'm going to search for the word wrap so that I can select all of them and turn them off. I want to show you kind of what the problem is. So this is what's actually doing. It's projecting them at this time in that position, and that's not what we want. And we can't, when there's in this wiggly state, we can't unwiggle them. It's a tricky one. Everybody's saying put in a connect object. Sadly, the connect won't do it. That'd be weird if it did. I'll try it. That's good. The logic of the connect is not in contradiction to that. I don't think it'll work, but we can try. The geometry is changing, but the only reason that might work is because our poly count isn't changing. So that could all go into a connect. It doesn't, it should be enabled, but it doesn't need to weld, which will make it run quicker. All of these stick texture tags I applied are not relevant. So I'm going to select the child tags, delete them all, move the material tag back up again, select it, say select identical child tags, deselect the first, delete them all. So I got rid of all that extra stuff again. Back to the time of 100. So we're right at that midpoint. I also reframed the camera, so it should be right around there. So that is all there. This is the way that it currently is with this projection. Can we stick the texture tag? I don't think it'll work, but if it does, it'd be a pretty simple solution. Click record. But if we, yeah, it didn't stick. It didn't stick. There's no UVs on the connect object. And I don't think you can, yeah, we can't generate UV coordinates because that is not that's not matching. Now, that's an interesting idea. Okay, I've got a ridiculous idea. Really, we shouldn't be spending this much time on this, but I am intrigued by the idea. Okay, here's the thought. This is really weird. But all this animation is happening, and the connect object is pretty much saying, like, I don't care what's going on. Merge these all down into a single object. Now, it's not geometry. It cannot get anything applied. But our point, like I said, the way we built this, it was built intentionally so that our point count is never changing. Every point exists all the time. So this one could do the animation, and if every single point of it got translated to a different object, then it would be forced to move to those new positions. It might run incredibly slowly, but I think in theory that would work. So here's the thought. Make it an entire duplicate of the hierarchy, temporarily hide one, because this one I'm going to make editable. It's baked down. It now has this material applied. And now if I right click on it and say, generate UV coordinates, now this is now UV and it's projected and it's there and it's stuck and it's going to work. That's fine. But of course, this is baked down. It's not going to deform. It's not going to move. It's just stuck there. Now this other object, this is the one that has all of our motion. This has all the information that we want, and they move into new positions. So we need to somehow transfer this motion onto a different object. Can we do that? Now, there actually a possible way. I don't know that will work, and we should definitely save this because we're getting into danger territory. It is possible that this could view the character or the rigging pose morph. So this is a pose morph. I'm going to say, I want you to use the points of an object. And it's like, well, okay, I'll use some points. I don't want that pose. What I do want is this connect object. Drag that in. Do I want it to be an absolute? I think yes. I can never remember. Yeah, see, it's remotely connected to that now. So this is saying, now I'm going to say go into animate mode, and the connect, it's saying do whatever the connect is doing 100% based on the points of it. And if that was working, which it doesn't seem to be, as I scroll this, that would be updating and changing to match that. And it's not moving at all. It's not reacting to it. And we're in animate mode, and this is not doing anything. We're not quite done yet. One thought is I'm going to put the connect into a null, Alt-G, feed it a correction. It's really slow. There's always a chance that that's going to like completely work it. Okay, it doesn't like a lot of, okay. As I clicked, it took that long for it to update, and it's going to be that's going to be a really freaking long time to calculate. Having done that, the correction deformer is seeing its final information. So inside of this correction, I can say, actually, don't reference. I keep getting these calls. Let me turn the volume off on the phone. Yes, go away. And now do this. Hang on. Go and there we go. Wouldn't let me put in vibrate until I superfought it. Okay, so this is super dangerous. There's a good chance we freeze here, but I'm going to throw the correction deformer in there as what it's supposed to be referencing. And those are more like raw points. Now when I change the time, did that work? And why is it running so fast? I don't know if it's working. Hang on. I think it's working. Why is it working so quickly? That's weird. And then, so, okay, well, if this is working, let's see. Right around here, how are we animating this? Oh, we've got all these individual wraps going. Actually, you know what's kind of intriguing here is I think this could be more parametric, like the original cloner didn't need to be made editable. Now we didn't delete it. It still lives in this file. So I'm going to copy that cloner, close it, bring it back in again. It does need the random effector applied. All right. This connector is connecting all this stuff, but we can delete that and throw this cloner in instead. And that should not, yeah, that's still working. They just need to be the same state at the same time. So at the time of 100, we actually want there to be a keyframe. So this offset should be kind of keyframe right there. We want it to be really smooth. So right clicking on that spline wrap, I could say, right click on that and say animation, show F curves. And yeah, here's what we want to do. This should not ease in. This should go quickly in. That should be pretty straight in. But this one, we want to slow down in that kind of logo moment. Something like that. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm going for. So we need to make this more blatant. Let's see. It's running incredibly quickly. I didn't think the correction deformer would work that well. So these are, you see, they're all weird and twisted. And then they, right as it slows down near 100, you see they're getting into that finalized position. And then it does accurately show the logo, and then it'll move away. Now, that's fine. What we want to do to make this look better is add more variation, because right now it doesn't look that messed up, all things considered. But the concept is there, and it seems to be working. There's a small chance I'm wrong, but it seems to be working. So how do we make this more blatantly messed up, and then we can see the final logo there? Now we will have to, every time we make a change to this cloner, we'll have to remake the editable version so we can bake the material down again, but it's not that bad. Now what I really want to do is do different speeds on the spline to show the variation, but they're all being moved via this spline wrap, which is something, actually, now that they're, now that they are the parametric setup that we have here, the surprisingly parametric setup we have here, it's not entirely parametric, but does it have to be spline wrap based now? As long as the point counts don't change, this is fine, I think. So let's see if we can make this a little more visually interesting and drive it with, yeah, I'm going to delete a bunch of stuff out. And even this is essentially not a variable. We'll get to that in a little bit. I care about the connect, but not the correction deformer yet. Okay, we have a cloner. There is a helix inside of it. Very, very simple setup right now. We can simplify more. There, as simple as could be. That needs to be geometry. We can do that by putting in a sweep and putting in a end side. T for scale. There's still a lot of them, so it is, and this is still possibly referencing. Don't run. Radius of 5. Yeah, that feels, well, I mean, we're going to rotate them. They'll mess up the spacing again. But let's just say, I mean, those all line up here, but really, I mean, we want to see the chaos. We want to see them a lot more random. So let's keep that in mind. The cloner needs its randomness again. Random, not position, but we'll give it that random rotation again, 360. So we get these strands. Now, it's running, I mean, it's running relatively well. We could double the count, and I see it's going to fill up a lot. So it'll be a little more readable there by doubling that count. Now, just, I guess, for our exercise here, we want these to travel away or up or down, or a bunch of different options. But we want them to, at the midpoint of the animation, end up here. We can do that. How do I want to do that? We do randomness. We can say plain, random, and crop them. Half would go up, half would go down if I did that correctly. We can try that. I'll try putting this on Y, and we'll move it 1,000 units. So you see it moved up 1,000. And apply a fall off of randomness. So that's going to randomly push it up and down, but not from that midpoint. But this will, let's unclamp it. And the remapping is currently going from a minimum of 0 to 100. And I don't want it to be from 0 to 100. I actually want it to be negative 100 to 100. Yeah, perfect. So if the strength of this, how do we make that happen? If I put a solid set to normal, that's going to pull them all down. So what we need this to do, this solid needs to be at 0, right? No. If that's overriding everything, 50%, we don't want 50% because this is pushing upward. So we'd actually want to have 0 of the amount. So we'd want 100% at 1. That's still pushing up all the way, though. But the value is 0. That doesn't make sense to me. Random field. Oh, okay, that's at 0. So maybe that does work. So that's pushing up and down. But we need them all to get maximum power. So this random field is not very high contrast. So what I really want is really high contrast on this thing so that they all travel. It's not necessarily super duper contrast, just more. So if I add a curve in here and start pulling these 2 points towards the center, that's going to start increasing the contrast. Like that. And it's only going to be these middle few that are kind of a problem. But we are cropping out a lot of these other ones, so maybe that doesn't work that smoothly. We need to increase the contrast. Like, it's the animation of these that will create the contrast. So let me think. I'm trying to just build. Hopefully this doesn't get too complicated. I'm just trying to make a clean setup. So that's fine. And we could introduce. I mean, there's no contrast here. But we could apply a curve and then pull the power of it away. That's actually, even this is weird. Oh, maybe a clamp's at 0 because this is traveling 0, positive 0, and negative 0. I'm overcomplicating. I'm trying to make it elegant, but and so it's conceptually making it complicated. I probably don't need it to be this weird. Like, let's do the simple version. So let's simplify. The only thing currently happening is we got all these helixes there. I'm going to randomly spin them. So there we go. And then in the cloner, it's at the time of 0. Yeah, the cleaner way to do this is at the time of 0, they'll all be at negative 1,000. So they're going to default down at the bottom of the screen. So they're out of screen. Then the plane effector is going to say at the time of 0, well, actually, we'll just do this. At the end of the animation, they'll be up at 2,000. So this will be full power at 2,000. Now they're above and out of screen. If I zoom out a little extra there, we'll just let them crop in and out the bottom a little bit so we can see them. So that's now transition there. That means at the beginning of the animation, this effector will be at 0 strength. Keyframe that, go to the end. It'll be up at 100. So you see we've done a full transition. Now we're actually going to want to do a little stop here in the middle, just like we had done before. So another keyframe right there. Right clicking on this, we'll do that same curve we did. So show the F curve, see this, set this to be flat. So it'll just kind of hang out there a little bit. And these can more quickly ramp into their positions. So that's going to calm down here. Now they're all moving uniformly. So it's going to go and slow down to where they're all hanging out and then travel upward. That's just fine. Now we can add a completely separate or possibly subservient. Yeah, let's try and do that. That might be fine. In the fall off now, I will add in that random field. And what is that currently? Yeah, you'll see that these will, it's going to be a little, that's randomly applying it. So I guess, yeah, let's just do it as a separate thing. That's going to keep it cleaner, conceptually cleaner. I'll just add this random effector. This random effector is going to randomly affect the Y position. And how far should we push it? I mean, they're already not quite, we'll crop it in more, but we can do something like that. So they're a little bit more random. So we'll put about 333. All right. So now this random effector is going to be at full, actually, I guess we might want 0 randomness there, but yeah, maybe not. It's not making the clean setup I want, because effectively right now we'd want it to be 0 at the time of 0, 0 at the time of 100, 0 at the time of 200, and in these in between states they could have a little bit more variation. When we zoom up, it'll help, and maybe this will work. I don't think it's going to look very good. 100, keyframe at 100, keyframe at 200. Go to those halfway points, give it lots of randomness. Go to this halfway point, give it lots of randomness. So now it's going to kind of introduce randomness, level out, and become random again, and then travel up. It's very weird. We could pass through. Might be better to pass through a fall off. Oh man, sorry. If I was just doing like one thing differently, this would be clean and elegant and easy to explain. And I'm just not there. All of it's here. I'm just not combining them right. And I don't want to. Let me think. Let's see. I don't want to make it all crazy. And like I said, I keep on resetting because I don't want to make it too complicated. The core concept is not that complicated, but if all these are moving together, it does us no good. So we need them all to travel at different speeds. But how do you get them to travel at different speeds, but then all end up here? And I'm really exaggerating the slow down because it could just exist for that 1 second. We're letting it live for longer to exaggerate it. So those are passing through. Where does their axis? What a more elegant way of doing this instead of keyframing up and down might just be to apply a randomness and give it a fall off of some sort. So they actually just pass through that. So if this had a linear fall off along Y, where is it? It's a little hard to see, but yeah, it's right there in the middle. And let's make that taller. And what I want it to do is remap the curve so that it's going to be at full strength and then weak in the middle and then full strength. That should be mapping from start to end. But it's not visually in the middle. Actually, I think that this lives down lower, like here, because that's where that, yeah, right there where it starts is where that would happen. So now it's super random there. And as it reaches the midpoint, they'll transition to be smooth again. And then as they move out, they'll get all that randomness back again. That's completely fine. We just need this to be the same height. So this curve, this field, needs to be 500 tall, maybe. Or is it not? Does it go in and out? In, out. Yeah, in, out. So I need that to go. Oh, it might be backwards. Let's try flipping it. Select all, flip vertically. Move this linear field down right until we just barely see movement right there. All right, let's see what that does. It's so uniform. Oh, it was better, but it's still not great. It's funny that we got the UVs working better than we're getting just these random lines traveling. Yeah, there's a lot of people attempting to give nice suggestions. The way that this is set up is very specific. wonder if they could all exist. Could we do it with particles? No, we couldn't. Could we? That'd be great if we could. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm still. This is a better question for the bonus stream than here because we're getting into the weeds a lot here. However, I still like the idea. Do we have the emitter? No, we killed the emitter concept. I'm actually going to try and bring back the emitter concept because it might work. Maybe if it doesn't work, then I'll give up for now. I'll very likely explore it some more in the future because I like it as a question. And if we did this properly, I don't think it would be hard to explain. The concept is not too crazy, but we just have to get the logic first. And the logic is not super easy. So that's going to shoot a burst of particles perfectly vertically. So we can say, pew! Let's have it be a single shot. So I'll add an extra 0 so we get a ton of them, but it only happens for one frame. Pew! All right, so we get that. Nice. And they will be traced. So those get traced. And we'll get the variation in them, but let me just step through this one at a time. Well, we have a sweep. What we need is that geometry. We need a set length. Yeah, that's what we need. We need that cylinder to come back. So welcome back, cylinder, with your radius of 5, height segments of 25, or let's do 20, rotation segments of 7. No caps. All right. So just have a nice cylinder in here. You see, there it is, hanging out, doing its thing. Hello. Actually, we have a lot of particles now. I'll drop that in half. Those will get this shape. That's going to have to end up in a connect. And the connect needs a spline wrap. So feed the spline wrap. It will be wrapped onto this. So you can see it's actually going to copy it on every single one. I want it to travel vertically on Y. And now we get a copy of each one of those. Set it to fit, keep length. So it's keeping the length. So if they hit play, they're going to be at the start point. If we invert the tracer, reverse it, reverse sequence, now they're going to be hanging out at the top. So you can see we end up with these lines traveling along it on the top. But this geometry, it's the same point count all the time. That's, again, the important thing. So this emitter is bursting out at a speed of 150 going vertical. Let's get a little bit of extra motion in here. So simulate forces, field force. Let's make it the same as gravity. Add in some nice randomness. The random field comes in with a noise, but it's a very small noise, so I'll crank that up. The display XYZ will be 0. We get a better cross section here. So there's the noise that we're actually traveling through. And we'll give that noise a little bit of speed. So now those should ignore the spline wrap. Ooh, and the height segments were supposed to be 20 there. So these are all going wee, going all crazy. That's fine, because then in the field force, we say solid, add, and I want that to go vertical. So it's got a lot more verticality. So they're in general going to travel upward. It's set to velocity. We could give them an initial speed, but they keep speeding up. So actually speeding them up is fine, but you usually need a lot of friction, which is, I'm fine with that. Simulation forces will add a bunch of friction in the scene. We say 100. So now all the energy of these is getting drained out, and now they're just traveling the line. You see, it's very controllable now. So you get all these lines traveling. We have a lot more controls we can do, but they're all traveling. they're all very uniform in their speed, and the randomness isn't quite as random as I want. So I can create a second random field. And this one will be way smaller. Bing. It'll be additive. Yeah, so they're going to be noodling around a little bit more, doing their thing. It's a little slow right now. We'll speed it up. Ooh, wiggly noodles. All right. Now we need their cross section, so this might need to be a lot taller. This will be back to being 1,000 units tall, which means we need more subdivisions. Back to 50. And then the speed will be quicker still. 300. Now you'll see as these go, you see how they actually do have an end? Those always exist all of the time. Now they are spreading out, or they're clustering up a little bit. I guess that is just something that naturally happens with different random fields. If we can speed it up a bunch. Does that make it better or worse? Worse. I don't know if I'm strictly bothered by that. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. The specifics of it could be fixed in various ways. So let's just pretend that this is what we want. They're traveling up. They're doing their thing. And how do we give it... I kind of want them to have different speeds. But you see, they are still quite uniform. And the random speed can't be given to them via the field force as we just built the rig, because this is just determining an additive velocity, which means that everything's being constantly overridden. So what we really probably need to do is set a change direction, and they all have a constant speed, and this is just a direction applied to them. So we want no friction, and now they're going to be born, and they're traveling at a set speed, and they'll just keep going. So now the speed is entirely determined via their initial birth speed. So if we do a speed of 500, then they'll be way faster. And then we can add a variation of, let's say, 55%. So now they'll now we have all this variation in their travel speed. And we got to be careful with that, maybe 25%. Let's see, that small noise is maybe a little small. Yeah, that's better. Although it's... See, if we don't have the small variation, then they completely get taken over via these noises. I could chill them out. But yeah, I mean, a direction is a direction. I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's a neat effect. We need them to... we can't make them repulse each other. And they're changing direction, so this becomes a set speed. I mean, it's fine. How do I do that? It's weird. I like to change direction because we get these constant random speeds. I just don't want them to cluster up this much, but they're naturally going to cluster up because we're feeding it that big noise. I guess maybe if the big noise is going really fast, because they're traveling through it pretty quickly. So if the noise changes quickly, then yeah, that's already making them spread out a little bit more. If the noise is noisier, then as they're at these different heights and different speeds, you see they spread back out again. Now let's visually hide the tracer, because all we really care about is these. They all start out at the exact same height, and then they slowly get their variation as they go. It might actually be a nice idea to, let's slow them down. I'm going to make 1/5 of them, but make them spawn for more frames. So there might be a little more variation on there. And then those tails can all travel. Now those tails are just traveling that active position. Yeah, okay, now we're getting nice spread. I made sure both noises were separate. So they're a constant speed, a little bit of spread, and well, I guess the line can't exist until they're all there, but eventually the line will exist. We just need all of them. We might, I think I do want all of them to exist on the first frame. That might be an important variable. So there they are. They all exist again on the first frame, but the separation should still be pretty good. So they all exist, and now the separation is pretty good. Let's just call that good. We can increase it if we need to. The scale could be more. La 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 la. That's a neat pattern. All right. Anyway, this is that's a whole bunch of like extra particle stuff I wasn't really intending to do. However, okay, so we get all these going. Now let's see if we can get the texture projection going. This all exists at this time. And let's just say, what frame do we want the logo to suddenly appear? Now, we're not going to be able to super control. It's not going to pause. And maybe you'd have to bake it and do some time remapping or something. But really, all we want this to do is to have the proper logo for a single frame. Now, this is going to look more impressive if we let it run for longer. Like, let's say, yeah, well, even not that long, but like right here, like right at, let's just say at this particular moment right there, this is when the logo should exist at, let's just say, the time of 100. So even though it could be slow us down, I'm going to double our count of particles. So let's just run this to frame 100. And they're all going to start appearing at different speeds. And right at frame 100, this is when we've kind of got this peak. Maybe we can go a little bit further just based on their speed. Yeah, we can go up to like frame 120. So let's just say right there, this is when the logo should exist. All right, assuming that, yes, that is the case, this is when the logo should exist. Here's the plan. If we put this into a connect object and make it editable, we can copy it, hit undo, and now paste. So now I've got a copy of that geometry at that particular time. I'm going to hide the original, but we still want it. So with that original hidden, I'm going to transfer the texture. Actually, I guess I didn't need to save it like that because it's just going to be a new texture applied. We'll even do it from scratch. A brand new texture applied to that. It's going to look super crazy because of UVs, but it'll be flat. And just fix that projection. I'm not sure where the material is living. Probably really down. Where's my... I don't know, lose my framing. It's up there. Once again, don't tile. And scale it to look approximately correct. Scale it up and just sort of place it. So it's like, okay, at this particular time, we want it to look like that. Good enough. So this is already applied to a single object with its own set geometry. Right-clicking on it and say, generate UV coordinates. It is no longer a flat projection. It's a UV map. And the UVs have modified to make this be what is actually applied. Now, that needs a, let's save it. CD, E. It needs the morph tag. The morph tag is already looking at the connect object, which I think is still the original one. So that's this connect object is what it wants to morph to. Okay, cool. Oh, wait, no, not that. We want the correction deformer. So we put the correction deformer in there. So if I turn on this correction deformer, that should activate. It might choke on it for a little bit. Let's click here. I'm clicking on the connect. Until the connect calculates, it's chugging along. Now, this is where I was surprised that it was running this as quickly as it was. And maybe this time it won't, because the correction deformer, maybe it just needs to exist one time and then the rest of the time it can just work. Although the frame 1 worries me. And it's actually not refreshing very well this time. Or it's not refreshing, so let's see if it wakes up. I did click one time on the connect and that should wake up. I'll click one more time just to make sure. Click and hold. So this is why I saved it. And this is what I thought would happen last time, is the correction deformer takes a really long time to calculate. And I thought it was going to take, every single frame was going to take this long to calculate. We might have just thrown a lot more geometry at it, on it. I'm not sure. It's taking a real long time this time. I mean, last time it didn't. Yeah, well, I don't know. How many do we have before versus how many do we have now? That's the only question. I'm going to check the chat a little bit. I don't want it to die. Salary cat, I mean, the connect, I think already is not welded. It's because before it was already not welded. And we tried it directly on the connect object, and it did not work as a reference. That's why it's called connect. Originally, we tried connect, and it didn't work. So maybe you weren't here for the beginning, but we already did those things. I'll check it. It'd be nice if it works. It's still not waking up, and I'm not sure if it is going to wake up. And if Salary Cat's right, maybe I forgot to take it out of edit mode. Then there's potential that that would work. And if we're ignoring the correction deformer, that would be a big improvement. So I will force quit Cinema, and we'll try that. It is full on not responding. So force quit. And that's why we save. Brawlius, it can't be... well, if you're not understanding the original question, yeah, you're fundamentally not understanding the original question. If it's a projected texture, it just sits there all the time. We want the individual parts of this to flow upward, and then on this one magical moment, they all align with each other. So it's not supposed to be like a projector projecting that texture all the time. It's supposed to be as if those noodles were painted painstakingly with the correct color in the perfect little spots, and it's a big messy pile of spaghetti until that one magical moment where they all align, and then the logo is revealed. The noodles shouldn't be passing through the texture. And if you project the texture, that's what it would be doing. All right, let's find out. This is back here. The correction deformer, it did not like that. We can transfer this over here. Keep the correction off. In the transfer everything over, we will feed the connect to be the information, in which case this is in that baked state. And that would mean this would just work. Everything's turned off and hidden. So if this is transferring properly, I should be able to just go one frame forward, and then we'll see stuff move. And it doesn't. So that's why we need the correct. Actually, nothing is moving. Well, we're not seeing it. But you see how nothing is moving? Oh, wait, we got to go back to animate mode. Almost did it again. And yeah, again, you see, I could have sworn before we did go into the animate mode. Maybe I didn't, but now I'm in animate mode. This is in the connect. The connect is seeing all of that geometry and animating, and it's cranked up on full power. So it is not transferring over. And if we turn this on, we'll see those will hopefully animate their way up. Hang on, they're not... did I break some? Maybe, hang on. Might not be all is lost because the emitter is not showing up. Spline wrap is off. Turn off this connect for a moment. Okay, that's emitting. Is connect breaking it? And the connect, you see the weld is off. So that is traveling fine with the connect. This now has that in there. So if I turn, yeah, but you see as soon as I turn this on, look, they're still up there. They're still up in their final position. And if this morph was working, they wouldn't be in that final position. They'd be down here matching this perfectly. That's this connect object is not transferring the data. Salary Cat, at this point, I can't just follow somebody's guesses. So if you can get this working and figure it out, I would absolutely love to see the scene file. If you join the Rocket Lasso Slack, like I'd love to see the example scene file you're talking about. But yeah, when I've tried to go down this path a lot of times with people doing suggestions, and there's a good chance that we're just not on the same page, and I won't be able to like, you're not thinking of it the same way I am, or I'm not thinking the same way you are, and those two paths can't match in the context of a live stream. Now, I do think we already did get this working with a correction deformer. It did work. The problem is it's not working right now. And I'm pretty sure that, let's see, if we go 2 frames forward, you see all these exist now. So I should be able to turn on the correction deformer right now, and it would work. But I'm pretty sure, not 100% sure. Oops, I just accidentally dragged something. Okay, that didn't crash it, which is good. Just delete things we don't need. We should be able to turn on this correction deformer and then let this filter through onto everything else. Actually, now I think about it, apologies. Maybe the connect could still work because I still have enable turned off because I turned that off earlier for speed up problems. So let's just try that. I would love if the connect works. So back to animate, enable. It did jump, so maybe it will work. So this goes back to maybe Salary Cat was right that I didn't turn on the enable. So now the correction deformer is off, and those did jump down. Because they do have matching points. They should have worked right from the beginning. Oh, no, they're not moving. tag, animate. Oh, they're not updating. Oh, that's weird. It's not triggering a refresh. It's not triggering a refresh. But if I change these sliders, it does update. So we might need to trick it. And there could also be a priority thing. These have this really weird priority, like expression. So if we change that, yeah, that's not forcing. It's not forcing the update. Oh, there we go. If we change there, I changed the priority, so that did update it. So okay, that, well, it's still a little bit weird, but let's hide this. It's working without the correction deformer, so thank you, Salary Cat, for pointing out I didn't turn on the animate earlier. So now those, we have one thing doing the animating, and the other thing is containing the UVs. And now, I forget who was saying it, but now do you see how each of these is like its own little noodle? And they have these different things projected onto it. And I don't know if eventually it'll get there. This still might not work. But as they travel up, then all these things have these different textures projected onto them. Right when they get to 120, that's when they suddenly line up. And just for that one little frame, we suddenly get, oh, I can't rewind, unfortunately. So we'd have to slow down. And like I said, we'd have to probably, well, this geometry, but we might have to bake and do the morphs in between. But there we go. This does seem to be working now. So there we go. We had to fight through it really hard. But now we can see we get all these lines traveling. Different spaghetti lines, some ahead, some behind. And in that one magical moment, all the UVs align. I think right there. As I, maybe one more frame, I'm not sure where we actually put that, right there. So on frame 120, that's when it's like, oh, the UVs are matched up. So it's crazy that we had to, like, you have to build two completely unrelated rigs so that one rig can hold the UVs and the other rig can hold the animation. But look at the setup now. This is really, really clean. Where we're tracing an emitter. The emitter's moving via some field forces, and then we don't even clone. We just spline wrap a bunch of cylinders onto it. The connect tells it to be one object. We make a copy of that, convert the UVs, use a morph tag to dynamically link the direct points onto that connect object, making them all align, and then they will all move. Now, if we make another material, that was on the Lumens channel, so I'll also put this in the Lumens channel, and I'll just eyedropper one of these dark colors and apply that also, but under. That's weird. Huh, it's overriding the texture for some reason. I just wanted to see a dark texture underneath it. And that seems weird. Wait, did that break the UVs? Did I accidentally move one UV on top of the other? Let me do that. I think I might have scooted one UV on top of the other. There we go. Yeah, so now you can get these individual noodles. Rewind. Oops, my framing just jumped. Now, if we had even more variation in the speed and whatnot, this could work even better. Now that I think about it, a slightly better methodology for this might have been to create a bunch of, well, you could literally kind of drop like a pile of spaghetti. If you drop a pile of spaghetti, then but it's all writhing around because of a noise of some sort, you could still have that one frame where it's like, and it matches. Something that's really cool is you can see how robust our field force is, because this is a completely unique simulation and it's still matching perfectly. So actually, this is, even though we spent a lot of time on this, like a big chunk of time, normally I don't like spending this much time. And I don't even know how useful this ended up being for a lot of people. But for myself, and hopefully for anybody who's sort of paying attention through it, here's what's valuable about this is we now have a new concept, a new tool in the toolbox. And what that new tool in the toolbox is we can decouple the idea of UVs and the object from each other. So in this case, It's like, well, we can never do this because the only way to stick something to it is with a UV tag. And by definition, we couldn't make that editable. But we can make it editable and then force it to match something else running the simulation. So by the idea of baking something down and then matching it to some other piece of geometry after the fact, that's the powerful part. That is really something pretty cool. And the morph tag makes this really easy. I thought we were going to have to go into Espresso and tell it to like move each point to each other point. It's actually not a terribly difficult Espresso rig, but that worked really well. Morphing between these is pretty funky. So yeah, that's pretty neat. I'll go over some chat stuff here, but we're pretty much at the end, and I don't know. Well, people seem happy that we finally got there. I'm not sure if, I mean, this is definitely one I could take it and boil it down and make it more of a proper tutorial. I would want to simplify the concept where it's really difficult. These noodles were a little bit, I'm calling them noodles, but noodles as a way of mentally thinking of them as something that you could paint on, because everybody paints on noodles. But doing this, I mean, it'd be really cool if like some of these were coming in from the top and from the side, and like as all these disparate things all gather. And it'd be really nice if we could, if I were to make a tutorial, it'd be really nice to take this and have a little more control over them kind of getting to the final spot. It'd be really nice if they were in that one spot for a little bit of time and with just a little bit of variation. Also, another thing to note, let's let it run again, but it's all based on that one projection. And we're looking at this very two-dimensionally, but keep in mind, this is a three-dimensional object. And because we did a frontal projection, it just passes right through. So it should actually maintain pretty well right through it. So as these travel, yeah, it looks even better in kind of 3D here. We're looking at flat, but as we let this run through, I'm not sure. It's not going to look correct from the proper point of view. I'm not going to match it perfectly, but something kind of like that. I think we're two more frames actually. So yeah, if we had the proper zoom perspective, then it would say the text properly. But then you can see that it's like, actually, there's all this depth to it and the texture is projected all the way through. Oh, it looks like I was looking at it from the wrong point of view. So it's going to look a little better here. But once again, it has to be really zoomed out and flat to see the entire thing. But seeing it, if we let that run a few more frames, like how quickly that's going to break apart, and it's just this nonsense. And it would be really, this would look best if these were like really traveling all over the place. So if this one, like all of them are generally staying in the same place, it would look really cool if this was like traveling over here and this was traveling down from the top and they were really traveling all over. It'd really break apart the pattern. And then when they all finally settle, it'd be like, whoa, how did all those get to this final perfect place? So there's more to explore there. I would definitely think that this would make for a cool tutorial. It will definitely go into the list of tutorial ideas for me to try and really noodle this down and or I'm sorry, noodle it down. I've got spaghetti on the brain. Take this and whittle it down until it is a really good, robust thing about baking something out, sticking the UVs, and then making it do complex things. Like conceptually, this is actually really cool. Like essentially, it's like, well, I mean, let's just keep in mind if we were to turn off. Let's put this in edit mode. Guess, if it's an edit mode, actually it's really weird looking. Is that what the geometry looks like? Well, maybe, yeah, without edit mode being on, I might be confusing it. It's at time of 0. It's gonna look weird at 0. Yeah, well, you just imagine that we've got this big like burst of geometry here. And it's like, well, what can we possibly do with that? It's like, well, we can do whatever we want because it's got the exact same point count and the exact same indexes as something that can be animated. So the transfer of points and whatnot, that's a very kind of Houdini type concept, and it's working really well here. And does everybody now understand why a lot of people were just like, do a flat projection? It's like, no, you can't do a flat projection. We need a UV projection because a flat projection doesn't move with the individual objects. Rocket Lots of Life, Season 1. I'm sorry, Season 2. Noodle Forest. Okay, that is going to wrap this up. I'll save the scene file. I mean, if there's a good chance next week this will be next week's tutorial because I really like it. I'll have to explore it some more, but there's some cool stuff here. I wonder if I shouldn't spend any more time, but I wonder if you could randomize the colors and whatnot a little bit. But they're all the same pieces of geometry. I'm really sad that there's the color variation shader in Cinema. I'm really sad that that doesn't work with. I guess in Redshift it would work. We could use a third-party renderer, and usually those can separate them by segments. But yeah, that's going to wrap this up. Once again, Salary Cat, thanks for mentioning I had not turned on the animate checkbox, so it put me down a more complicated path, and I'm glad that it's working much more simple. It's actually running really quick too, all things considered. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out and asking questions and just even helping me figure out things as we go. So if you like this kind of thing, I have a Patreon set up. These live streams are free. Every Wednesday, answering questions for at least 2 hours, just for everybody, for the community. I have the Rocket Lasso Slack channel, rocketlassoslack.com, if you would like to join and hang out with all these nice people and answer and ask questions and just be cool and share projects and things like that. You can do that. If you do support on Patreon, then you get access to the scene files. You get access to bonus live streams on Tuesday, on Thursday, early access to all the videos getting posted. You get scene files from tutorials, from the live streams. I guess that's most of it. And yeah, that's kind of everything. Otherwise, the tutorials are free. These live streams come out for free. All the good stuff ends up out there for everybody. But in any case, it is not necessary, but appreciated. That should wrap this up. Thank you again, everybody, for asking and answering questions as we go. And I'll see you on Tuesday's tutorial or on the next live stream on Wednesday. So see you then, everybody. Bye-bye. Oop, wrong button. Boop. And